Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Yeah, there's a difference between asking for more and complaining because you didn't specify how much of something you actually wanted. This is why you should be nice to the people making your food. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Extra mayo? You got it. I was working on the burger station doing the daily grind. SOP, lay down wrapper, grab buns, open buns, 1 trigger squeeze of mayo from the mayo gun, half a handful of lettuce, original or zonger chicken patty, lid on, wrap, down the chute, repeat. Cue a special order, zonger burger with extra mayo. Follow SOP, lay down wrapper, grab bun, open bun, 2 trigger squeeze of mayo from the mayo gun, half handful of lettuce, zonger chicken patty, lid on, wrap with special side up, down the chute. 2 minutes later, counter staff. Hey, that extra mayo is back complaining they didn't get extra mayo. Manager in earshot. OP, can't you follow instructions? Me. Shouts out I did add extra, but no problem, I'll make a fresh one. Turns to counter staff and winks. Lay down wrapper, grab bun, open bun, as many triggers of mayo I could fit on the bun, easily 8 or so. Seriously resembled those piped cakes or the top of a meringue with many peaks. Delicately add the half handful of lettuce, zonger chicken patty, lid on, wrap with special side up, super gently, making sure not to push down on this now feat of engineering, and personally walk it out to the customer and apologize. 5 minutes later, counter staff, dude, extra mayo's back again, and pissed. Me, goes out for the LOLs. Extra mayo has a huge stain of mayo down their business shirt, pissed off attitude, holding a wrapper with a mayo explosion inside. I want to talk to your manager. Don't fully remember the rest, but got chewed out by management and they refunded this guy and gave more free crap, but that mayo stain was magnificent. And our second story. Airport incident turns into a paid-for holiday. After a wonderful few days visiting New Orleans, hubby and I were on our way back to Europe. We had to make a connection in Boston and needed to collect our luggage to check them in again onto the following flight. We had no issues at check-in for the first flight, but when we got to the desk in Boston, the member of staff told us our bags were too heavy. After some back and forth where we tried to figure out why they were fine for the previous flight, but suddenly they weren't for this one, the employee wouldn't budge because of an obscure company policy that wasn't even on their website, and they were adamant we pay extra there and then. They were visibly annoyed and barely civil when we politely declined and told them we'd be back. They want our bags to be lighter? No problem. We'll make our bags lighter. We walked away from the desk and put some extra layers of clothes on as well as filled our pockets with some small but heavy items, all while still very visible from the employee. We looked more like misshapen voodoo dolls than actual humans. They were not impressed, to say the least. But here's the cherry on the cake. As we were rejoining the queue to check in, I hear an announcement about our flight. Turns out the company had overbooked it, and they were looking for passengers willing to be transferred to the following flight instead, which was 2 days later. As compensation, these passengers would be put up in a hotel for 2 nights for free, get breakfast and dinner paid for, and receive 600 euros each. Yes, you read properly. It took my husband and me a whole of 30 seconds to decide we'd take them up on the offer. We were both self-employed at the time with no commitments on the 2 days following our planned return date, and neither of us had ever visited Boston. Plus, we'd just gotten engaged, so it seemed like a great way to keep celebrating. When we get to the desk, the staff member looked at our rather bulky attires and barely managed to hold back the eye roll, but when we said we were volunteering to be moved to the next flight, their manager was so glad they treated us like royalty, which made the original employee even more annoyed. While we were waiting for the paperwork to be done, we put all our extra layers back in the bags with a huge grin on our face. We were transferred to a super nice hotel. Our room was basically a 1-bedroom flat. The bed was so wide I could have slept perpendicularly on it, and spent 2 fantastic days discovering Boston and being paid to do so. Turns out no one else took the offer, so they didn't manage to free up enough space for the group they'd overbooked. Paying for our stay didn't help their situation at all. But that didn't tarnish our experience one bit. Had we not decided to not be bullied into paying extra by a rather rude employee, we would have not heard the announcement and would have missed out on a pretty sweet adventure. The real question is, when you returned for your flight, were your bags too heavy, or did they let them through that time? And our last story. My dad's house is serviced by a community well that is now owned by an HOA. My father owns a house in an area with a community well. Back in the 90s, when he bought the land and had the house built, the neighborhood was all supposed to be developed. My father knew someone involved in the plans and bought a plot as soon as the opportunity came up. Meanwhile, the well was put in by a well service, and the way the contract worked, the well service owns the well and lines. However, there was some drama with the development company, and the rest of the development didn't end up happening at that time. They eventually sold it all to a different development company, and that new company developed the block as an HOA neighborhood. They asked my dad to join. He said no. It was never really an issue again until recently. After the area was developed, the well company has always managed the well and bills people directly. They pay a very small amount that covers the cost of maintaining the well as well, extremely cheap. Apparently, the well servicer recently wanted to get out of the well business, but not a lot of well servicers want to own the well. They want to service them on contracts, but don't want to be the actual owners these days. So they sold the well back to the HOA, who now owns it, and hired a new company to do the maintenance. Now, here's the failure on our part. My dad received notice in the mail about this from the HOA. However, they've sent him mail in the past that was not relevant to him, so he thought the recent mailings were crap and ignored it. So apparently there were 3 community meetings held about this, and he did not attend. They've left him voicemails, but he admits he listened to the first 2 seconds, thought it was political spam, and ignored it. Now they've finally gotten in touch with him that since the well is owned by the HOA, they're treating it as an HOA benefit, and they can't give those benefits to non-members. They told him they understand that he doesn't want to be held to HOA covenants just to keep getting the same water he always has, but since the HOA is taking on the burden of the well, they need to be fair to members and not have someone who isn't paying for HOA benefits receiving them. It sounded exactly as slimy as it reads. They're offering him a special allowance to join the HOA, but not be held to the covenants such as house colors and fences and all those other things, but so he can use the well. I don't know if they're being slimy and pulling a fast one without a legal basis, or if my father should be legitimately concerned. He did end up getting a lawyer to see him ASAP. The lawyer told him the first thing he needed to do was get records of ownership for the well and try to get his hands on the details of the sale. However, after a couple of days, he said he was having issues getting up-to-date records and was waiting to hear back from a contact at the county because he wasn't sure if COVID had delayed records filing or what. Then my dad got a surprise, a water bill from the original well servicer right on time for their 3 times a year billing. Obviously, that's odd considering he's been told they don't own the well anymore, and he called him up. It turns out he was just lied to. The well servicer was never looking to get out of the well business permanently, but rather was looking to contract out the day-to-day testing services of the well to another company because many of the wells they service now require more testing than they did years ago, and they no longer have the manpower to do it all themselves. But they were not selling the well, simply hiring an independent contractor to drive around and do well stuff all day. During that time, the HOA had asked them to attend an HOA meeting so residents could ask questions about things like filtration, and they mentioned it at the meeting to let residents know that they would be seeing a new person going around doing testing and wanted to let them know because the testing involves taking samples from individual properties and they didn't want anyone to be freaked out. So when the HOA told my dad they now owned the well, they were just plain lying. When the HOA said they had a new company doing the servicing, they were half-truthful. A new company was doing the testing, but the HOA had nothing to do with it. The contract's between the original well servicer and the individual guy they're contracting out to. The original well servicer also told my dad that the HOA had reached out and informed them around the same time they were contacting my dad that they were taking over handling billing and that the well servicer should bill the HOA for all properties, and the HOA would then include it in the HOA dues billing to streamline things for residents, claiming it would make their residents' lives easier if they only had to keep track of one bill and not multiple. However, the HOA actually has no authority to just declare this, and the well servicer just outright told them no, they'll continue to bill individual properties. The timing of this coincides with when they started contacting my dad, so they were just trying to pull a fast one on everyone. The well servicer is confident that the HOA has zero legal authority over the well situation and says they respected the HOA in an organizational capacity, like calling meetings so residents could ask questions, and were professionally annoyed with them trying to insert themselves into billing, but they were not aware that the HOA was claiming to own the well. They told my dad that he should not give the HOA any money for water servicing or accept water servicing related information from them in any way. So going back around to the lawyer, my dad got an appointment with the lawyer to tell him all this, and the lawyer had his own news that matched up entirely. The reason he wasn't finding up-to-date records following the supposed sale was because he doesn't believe a legitimate sale has happened. He thinks my dad was just getting scammed. So all in all, my dad will continue to use the well as he always has. He's pretty angry that he had to spend a bunch of money to find out what he already knew, that the HOA's made of jerks. But we're definitely breathing a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, as for the HOA, my father's lawyer has suggested that there may be room for legal action against the HOA reps for what was basically fraudulent claims. My father doesn't want to spend the money pursuing it at this time, but the well servicer did ask for copies of everything he received from the HOA because they want to review it with their own lawyer. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.